How's it going, everyone? This is Soul Singed here, and welcome back to my weekly BattleBots video, where I go over my predictions and thoughts on each fight. I always start off with my predictions, then afterwards I watch the fight, and then give my thoughts on every fight. So first off, we have Captain Shredderator versus Axe Backwards. Axe Backwards has never really worked. And Captain Shredderator also has a pretty good habit of not working, but I'm giving it to them mostly because they seem to be pretty solid this year. I know they lost their first match to Lockjaw, but they do seem to be like a rather decent robot. Next we have P1 versus Copperhead. P1 was not that good last year. I don't even know if it ever aired on TV. Like, I don't know if they had any televised matches. I know they had some of the basement tape matches. But I don't know anything about them. I don't know if they've improved any or not. And Copperhead looked very good in his first match, so I'm going to have to go with Copperhead on this one. Next, we have Beta versus Rusty. I know realistically Beta probably wins, but I don't know. Part of me feels like Rusty actually wins. I don't know why. I got a gut feeling that it's going to be Rusty, and I may be horribly wrong, and probably am, but I just got a gut feeling. Plus, I love Rusty. I really like the built out of random scrap theme he has, and the fact that he's on tracks, which I love tracks. I want to see more tracked robots. I love them. So yeah, go Rusty. Next we have Hypershock versus Mammoth. I would give it to Hypershock, but honestly, I feel like Mammoth is going to get the win here because they looked very impressive against Huge, and Hypershock didn't really do so well in its first match. Next, we have Sporkanog versus Sub-Zero. No questions asked, Sub-Zero. Sporkanog has only had one match, and it didn't look all that impressive. Sub-Zero looked decent its first match, then died in its second match. It looked fantastic, so yes. Next, we have Tracer versus Bale Spear. Bale Spear does look like it's improved since last year. We haven't seen it fight yet, and I have not seen the Bounty Hunter series yet. But I don't know. I still don't see that little punchy spear doing anything. So yeah, I'm going with Tracer. And lastly, we have Whiplash versus Gruff. This is a toss-up. I feel like this is one that could go either way. And, man, I don't know. I think I got a gut feeling to go with Gruff, so that's who I'm picking.
Well, I got 4 out of 7 right, which is how I do most of the time. So yeah, Axe Backwards versus Captain Shredderator. I honestly expected Captain Shredderator to just dominate this match and destroy Axe Backwards, which isn't what happened. Axe Backwards actually looked fairly impressive. They held their own until Captain Shredder was able to get that one shot that knocked off one of their wheels. And that is a couple things I've noticed about Axe Backwards. They they need top-notch driving to avoid having their wheels knocked off, because once they get one wheel knocked off, that's it for them. They got a few hits in with that full-body drum spinner, which of course, with Captain Shredder being a full-body spinner, it's going to be very hard to just outright damage that, which they didn't really do a whole lot of damage to Captain Shredder other than a couple of hard hits that made them bounce around the arena a little bit. But yeah, Captain Shredder looks fairly impressive, and Axe Backwards is finally working, which, to my memory, they've never. I don't know if they've ever won a fight or not, but to me, I've never seen them where they've actually worked. A full body drum spinner is definitely an interesting concept, but it hasn't been dialed in yet, and it looks like they might be finally onto something. Next up, we had Copperhead versus P1. Not much to say here. Copperhead, their drum spinner looks absolutely fantastic. They dominated this fight from the start and had P1 taken care of within less than 15 seconds. Next up, we had Beta versus Rusty. Beta actually uses their hammer, and their hammer's pretty powerful. And Rusty, despite the fact that it lost pretty poorly, it still looked fairly well. It was pretty agile, being able to outmaneuver Beta at some points, which is especially impressive coming from a rookie driver who has had really no experience in robot combat, at least from what we know. And Rusty looks to be like a fairly competitive bot. Like, I know a lot of people are treating it as a joke robot, but he actually looks fairly competitive. You know, if he had some better internals, a more powerful weapon, he could be a legitimately competitive robot. Because we also saw Rusty getting pretty close to getting that pneumatic jackhammer drill down on Beta, which we still don't know how dangerous that weapon is yet, but it's something. Next, Mammoth versus Hypershock. I picked Mammoth because of how impressive they looked against Huge and how they were able to just keep taking hit after hit after hit from Huge. But Hypershock absolutely destroyed them. And that's kind of what Hypershock does every year. They'll start off poorly, then turn into an S tier bot. And that's exactly what we saw, because they looked very poor against their first match. And this one, they just destroyed Mammoth. So hopefully they have it dialed in and they can keep up their success. And hopefully Mammoth can get everything put back together and we'll see them again in their next fight. Next up, Sub-Zero versus Sporkanock. Sub-Zero had some issues. I mean, they were pretty dominant, not as dominant as their last match where they just tossed Grab Out around like a piece of trash. Sporkanock couldn't really do anything. And Sub-Zero was having some issues, but still pretty dominant. And they look like a legitimate contender, which is really good since we don't have any other powerful flippers right now aside from Hydra, because Bronco's out and Aegis's armor is made out of cardboard. So looks like Sub-Zero is the only other decent flipper this year. So good for them. Next up, Balespear versus Tracer. I know a lot of people have said Balespear has improved to be a legit contender, but to me it just looks more goofy and gimmicky with the whole farmer setup. And that punching arm still doesn't look like it can do anything. And Tracer definitely has a powerful weapon, but it just looks so slow and clunky to me. I don't know. It moves very slow. Like, it honestly kind of reminds me of like a Zamboni going around an ice skating rink. I don't know why, but that's what Tracer reminded me of. And I don't know. To me, it just looks kind of slow and clunky. And the way it's designed with that big flat front, it doesn't look like it would take too much to get like a horizontal spinner in there to really just dig in and tear the whole front end off. Keep in mind that the motor, the weapon, and everything is connected to one axle, so if you take that out, you're destroying the entire robot essentially. So yeah, still not quite sold on Tracer. And then our main event, Gruff versus Whiplash. I said this one could go either way. I went ahead and picked Gruff just because of how durable they were. But Whiplash dominated that match. Even though they lost their spinner throughout it, they still had their lifting forks and they still dominated the match. They had hits with the spinner, flips with their lifter. They just dominated, and it looks like the Whiplash we all know and love. So, looks like after their first loss to Sawblaze, was it Sawblaze or Scorpios they lost against in the first episode? I don't know, I can't remember right now, but after that loss, they seem to have gotten everything back dialed in, so, yeah. The ones from this episode that I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to is Captain Shredderator to a certain extent. Looks like they're finally onto something. Copperhead, Beta, Hypershock, and Whiplash. Those are the ones that I'm really paying attention to right now. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I do have an EP coming out sometime in the future, not exactly sure when, as well as another secret music project I'm working on. I just recently uploaded another rap-related video titled Why I Love Coaches. If you're interested, go check that out. Got loads more content on the way, and yeah. Peace.